Church. Thank you guys so much. Hey, wow, that was just amazing. Hey, my name is Michael, and wow, I was getting ready to say I'm one of the pastors here, but I am a pastor, and so I want to welcome you today. If you're watching at our Lancaster campus or you're watching online, just get into the chat, say hi to our campus pastor, David Park. He'd love to meet with you and connect with you as well. It's so good to be back in the house at Real Life Church. Man, I want to just say quickly, thank you guys so much for all the love and support that you have shown my family over the last just 3 years, and especially the last couple of months. I've been out in Orlando the last 3 weeks, and one of the things I love the most, which really showed how much you cared, is our communications team came out and said, man, your church really just blew up our social media. So thank you guys for all the love and stalkering that you did while I was gone. So appreciate that. If this is your first time, we're so glad that you're with us, and I want to let you know that if you've come here for the first time, I'd love to meet you after the service to tell you just how great this church is, how awesome this church is, and how awesome the lead pastor of this church is as well, too. So, now, question, do we have any gamers in the house today or watching online? Like, you're like a hardcore gamer? Okay, I'm not talking to you right now, okay? Because listen, you're way too hardcore for me. Like you're sitting in your computer chair with your headphones on, like you're like at a commando battleship. You got a party of 5. You're attacking some fortress with a squad of computerized killers with potato chip crumbs on your soda belly. No, that's not me. I'm not that type of gamer, okay? I'm just like a regular gamer. Like I use gaming as a way to relax and forget about all the other things I have to deal with in life, okay? Like this is not life or death for me, okay? Now, is there gamers, do you guys play this game here called Madden, okay? Anybody play that game? Any Madden players out there? All right, well, I love this game. This game is awesome, okay? It's really cool. And basically, if you love football, pro football, because they took away the college game, you can play this game. And one of my favorite modes of the game is called franchise mode, where you literally can get into the game and take over a whole franchise of an NFL franchise. I mean, you control like the ticket sales, the coaching, the players you get in free agency, the players you release, the firing of coaches. You even control if you want to move the team. I actually had moved the Rams out here years before the Rams actually moved out here. So thank you. LA should be thanking me that I'd already done that, okay? And in the game, you can choose the different levels that you play the game at. Now, there are 4 different levels. There's the beginning and rookie level, which is like basically the computer cannot do a thing against you. You're awesome. You're amazing, right? Everything is super easy. Then there's the basic level of difficulty, which is called the pro level, which means that there's a balance of your skill versus the computer skill, and how you play determines how the game goes. Then there's hard. Okay? So they put pro before hard. So the hard level means that the computer has a slight upper hand when you play against it. The most difficult level is called the all Madden level, okay? Basically, when you put it on this level of difficulty, the computer has the greatest hand. Literally every pass you throw, there's a 95% chance to get intercepted. Every time you run the ball, in football, for those of you who know football, every time you run the ball, there's a 95% chance you're going to fumble it, right? And when you're on defense, there's a 95% chance that the offense will score a touchdown in your face and rub it in really hard, okay? Right? Now, of course, I'm a competitor, so I want to play the game at this level. I want to play the game at this level. But you start playing, and very quickly you realize how bad you suck, right? And because of how bad you suck, you may have gotten angry and done some things, okay? For example, maybe one time you were playing the game on Odd Madden and you got beat 76-0. And so in response to that butt whooping, you decided to unhook the PlayStation, walk outside, and have a pound fest in the middle of the road with your PlayStation. Literally broke it into pieces. Walked back into the house and your wife is not talking to you anymore. I'm not saying that happened to me. I'm just saying it happened. Okay? And listen, it was so frustrating when that happened to me that I started, so I went online and I said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I've got to save my marriage. I've got to find a way to beat this game, okay? So I went online and I discovered that you can edit the settings to the game. Now, here's the thing. I did not want to stop playing on all Madden mode because, you know, you don't want to walk into a conversation and be like, what mode do you play on? Well, I play on beginning pro. And they're like, I play on all Madden. And they're like, well, you're a punk, right? No. I want to tell people that I play on all Madden, okay? So I went online and found that you can edit the AI setting. And not only can you edit the AI setting, but you can actually go to this thing called the player edit screen. Okay? Which means that you can take your player and you can edit and make them the best player to ever play on the face of the planet. So I spent an hour one day after I got a new PlayStation and got the game again. I spent an hour editing every single player on my team so that way they reach the 99 score. I literally had the greatest team ever created in NFL football history. I was literally winning games 300-0. And my stress level went way down, and my marriage got 10 times better. Now, you're probably like, what in the world? What does this have to do with Jesus? Let me tell you. For one reason or another, most of us have invented or tried to player edit a version of Jesus that isn't accurate, helpful, or true. Like maybe we read somewhere in the Bible, we read like this one phrase and we just stopped right there. That's the Jesus I like. Don't really care what else I hear about him. That's the one I want to hang out with. That's the one I believe in, right? Or maybe we were taught something and we thought, man, if that's really Jesus, then I don't want anything to do with him. And so we have this incomplete picture of Jesus. Maybe we were told that this is who Jesus is. Jesus is against this. Jesus doesn't like this. Or Jesus is for this. He loves everything. He likes to play with flowers. And that's the Jesus we like. Or that's the Jesus we didn't like. Or maybe we saw a bunch of people who claim to follow Jesus act a certain way, vote a certain way, treat people a certain way, and that's the picture of Jesus we have, and so we're either drawn to it or we're repulsed by it. However it happened, the Jesus we may think we know or understand most likely isn't the true and real Jesus that we read about in the collection of books known as the New Testament. The Jesus that we think we know is a really cheap imitation. He is basically a player-edited version of the real and authentic Jesus. So for the last several weeks, we've been in a series called BYOJ, Bring Your Own Jesus, where we are exploring the misconceptions about our player-edited version of Jesus and who really Jesus said he was. And so 7 times in the retelling of Jesus' life, we see one of Jesus' followers, a guy by the name of John, record 7 times Jesus saying, I am. Okay? And so for the last couple weeks, your campus pastor, Kevin Finkbeiner, kicked off the series walking everyone through how Jesus said, I am the light of the world. And then last week, Kevin talked about how Jesus said, I am the gate. Today, I want to look at what Jesus meant when he said, I am the good shepherd. Okay? So I am the good shepherd. Let's check out what John records here. So in John chapter 10, starting at verse 11, he says this. He says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. Okay? So Jesus, if you've been following along in this story, Jesus is continuing a conversation that he's been having with the religious teachers of his day. And what he's doing here is he wants to drive home the point that he, Jesus, was the very voice of God calling people out of their spiritual darkness. Now, if you remember, they, being the religious teachers, were mad at this blind man that Jesus had just healed because this blind man had given his support and following to Jesus. So, to drive home this point further, Jesus gives an illustration of a shepherd and a sheep. And so Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. And what does the good shepherd do? Well, he says the good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. You see, Jesus is the good shepherd. God is good. Now, the Gospels, which, if you may not know, are the first four writings of the second half of the Bible, the New Testament, and the Gospel means good news. It means good news. It means that Jesus was willing to die for us in our place. And the fact that he said that I am the good shepherd should indicate to you that maybe there are others who are not as good. In fact, he doesn't simply just imply that, but in verse 1 of John chapter 10, here's what he says. He says, I tell you the truth, anyone who sneaks over the wall of a sheepfold rather than going through the gate must surely be a thief and a robber. Now, he's talking about our spiritual enemy. And I don't know if you know this, but we have a spiritual enemy, and we call him Satan. He is the great counterfeiter and deceiver. He hates God and he hates God's people. And his mission, this enemy's mission, is to steal, kill, and destroy everything that matters to the heart of God. And unless you've been living under a rock, you have to admit that there is a power of evil in this world destroying a lot of things that matter to God. I mean, there are a lot of people who are sick. There are a lot of families that are falling apart. There are a lot of marriages that are in trouble. There are a lot of kids making bad decisions. There's a lot of division and a lot of hate in this world. And I believe at the root of that is the thief and the robber, the enemy. So, if Jesus in this metaphor is the good shepherd, then that begs the question, who are we in this illustration? Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm most definitely guilty of putting myself on the same pedestal standing as Jesus in these stories. Like, I see Jesus as the good shepherd, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that's me. I'm the good shepherd. I'm a leader. Them sheep be following me, right? I got them sheep just bang all day long, right? That's how awesome I am. That's what I like to think. But we all know that's not true, right? I am not the good shepherd in this metaphor. No, you and I, we are the sheep. Say, what? I'm out, right? Like, for Jesus to call Jewish people at that time and place sheep, that would have been some fighting words. Like, they'd be like, okay, we got to throw hands, Jesus. Like, nah, man, we don't roll like that, right? Now, as a side note, I just want to make this very clear, okay? Just as a side note, write this down in your notes, post it on Instagram later for all the world to see. Did you know that sheep are mentioned the most? They're the most animal mentioned in the Bible. They're mentioned over 200 times. There are references to sheep throughout what is commonly called the Old Testament and the New Testament. And since we're talking about animals, did you know dogs are mentioned 44 times in the Bible? Do you know how many times cats are mentioned? 0. You can't find the word cat in any of the original languages that the Bible was written in. Unless, of course, you're talking about like lions, which are in the cat family. And just so you know, when the scriptures talk about the enemy, they mention that the enemy is roaring around like a what? A lion. You see the direct connection between the enemy and cats, okay? I'm just saying. Honey, if you're listening at home, we got to get rid of them cats, okay? But this metaphor, okay, you and I are the sheep. And honestly, if we're being honest, that doesn't feel great, right? It doesn't feel like a great thing to be called a sheep. Because we all know, and I hope there are no sheeps in the house, please don't get offended, sheeps are the dumbest animals on the planet, right? Rusty has shown many times that video of that sheep jumping in the ditch, getting stuck, getting pulled out, jumping right back in the ditch, right? Come on, man. Like if you were to go to a circus, think about this. If you were to go to a circus, you would see trained animals like donkeys and dogs and elephants and even tigers and even fleas believe this or not, you can train fleas. But you know what you can't train, and you know what you don't see at a circus? Sheep. Why? Because they're too dumb. And they lack the ability to really think for themselves. So in this metaphor, Jesus is the good shepherd, the good leader, the voice in the darkness, the gateway to safety. And we're the sheep. Now, I want to point out some reasons why we are the sheep in this metaphor that Jesus uses. And I think you will understand this too as well, okay? Here's why we're the sheep in this metaphor that he uses with the religious teachers. One, man, we get lost real easily. Okay? We do. Like sheep, we get easily lost. Sheep, when they are not in the sheepfold, Grace, one of our pastors here, talked about this during Mother's Day of last year, that this sheepfold that keeps them away, when they're not in the sheepfold, they literally wander away and end up lost so many times. And you know what? We are the same. In fact, in the first part of the Bible, in the Old Testament, we see one of God's messengers, a guy by the name of Isaiah, write this about humanity. He says, all of us, like sheep, have strayed away. We have left God's path to follow our own. You know, it's so common for sheep to walk away from the shepherd fold and to say, you know what? I think I'll go this way. I think there's something over there that makes me happy. I'm going to try that out. You know what? I think this makes me happy. You know what? I really don't know what to do, so I'm just going to do everything. Right? I can't seem to make a good decision. And the reality is that is where many of us are at. We're really trying to figure out this life, but we seem to keep making bad decisions. Well, it's because sheep without a shepherd get lost very, very easily. Here's another thing about us being sheep. We are defenseless, okay? Like sheep, we are defenseless. Like, you can think of all the facts about every animal. Every animal has some form of defense, right? Cats, as evil as they are, can claw your eyes out, right? Many animals have fangs. Some will even have like some horns, right? Some can kick. Some can fly away. Some are really, really fast. Some blend into their environments. You know what sheep do? Nothing. They can't do anything. They're defenseless. You attack a sheep, right? You attack a sheep, and they just do whatever they do. They're really, really defenseless. Sorry, the screen got ahead of me. So, yeah, they're totally defenseless. You can attack a sheep, and what can they do? They just back off. That's why I wanted to read that. Yeah, because it's a good joke. It's a good joke. It's a dad joke. I love dad jokes, okay? All right? But they're defenseless. They're on our own. And without Jesus, the good shepherd, the other followers of Jesus around us, we are very vulnerable to the lies of the evil one. Believing those lies lead us to the kind of life that God never meant for us, the kind of life that doesn't represent God's best for us. Here's another thing about sheep and us. We're stubborn, right? Like sheep, we are very stubborn. Like, look at the person next to you and say, I think he's talking about you right now. And if that person next to you is your spouse, look at them and say, I definitely think he's talking about you right now. The other day I read that sheep, whenever they walk in between two rocks, okay? Check this out. This is crazy. Whenever sheep walk in between two rocks and they get logged in, right? Sheep are too dumb to go in reverse, right? So you get your foot stuck. The natural thing is to go what? Right? Sheep are like, they push further in. It's crazy. They just keep lodging themselves in, going forward, getting even more stuck. And let me ask you, how many of you know somebody like that right now? Okay, I want to do this. By a show of hands, okay? By a show of hands, how many of you literally right now, if I say, who's the most stubborn person in your life, can think of a person? Raise your hand. I'm putting up 2 hands. And it's not my wife, I promise. Okay? Don't point to them, because that'd be rude. Okay? It's like, you know that person, right? It's like that person who complains about never having money, and they're like, oh my gosh, I never have money. Oh my gosh, look at this brand new Gucci purse, let's get it, right? They're like, wait, what? That makes no sense, right? Or you're like the person who has like terrible relationships. They're always in bad relationships. And then they're on like, wherever. They're like, oh, look at this guy with all the tattoos and motorcycle. And he just got out of jail. That's the guy I want to marry, right? You're like, wait, what? Right? Yeah, or the parent who complains about their kids' bad behavior while also reinforcing that bad behavior, right? They're just stubborn. They're like sheep. And here's the last one, and you're probably going to get offended when I say this. So, just warning you. Like sheep, we are filthy. Ooh. Right? We're just filthy. We stink. And we don't have the ability to clean ourselves. Just like sheep don't have the ability to clean themselves. Someone has to do it for them, or they just remain stinky and filthy all the time. You see, before Jesus, all of humanity was separated from God because of our fallen, sinful nature. That is, we all do wrong no matter how hard we try to. That's our sin nature, the inability to do what's right according to God. Now, you might be listening to this and you're thinking like, what the heck, man? What the heck are you talking about? I'm a good person. My spouse is a good person. My parents are good people. And if that's the case, why would a loving God consider us filthy? I mean, this is a question I've seen posed by many, many people. I've seen people ask this question all the time. And sometimes it's answered in like a harsh and unhelpful way. So let me try to answer this in a way that is both truthful but gracious. You see, God is perfect. There is nothing imperfect about him. He is the very definition of perfection. We, on the other hand, are not perfect. We make mistakes. Even with the best intentions, our lives, apart from Jesus, fails in comparison to who God is. And so, what we think is good really isn't all that good. In fact, Jesus would say it in this way. He said, God's light came into the world, but people love the darkness more than the light, for their actions were evil. You see, our definition of good is based on an imperfect understanding of good, whereas God's understanding of good is based on his very nature of being the perfect good. So, because of our inability to do what's right, we are filthy in the eyes of God on our own. But when we become followers of Jesus, we are made perfect because instead of seeing us, when God looks at our sins, he sees the good shepherd. He sees the good and perfect Savior who comes to clean us up. But here's the thing. Now, in order for us to be cleaned up, in order for us to be seen as clean in God's eyes, there was a cost that we were unable to pay. Like we could have offered up all the money and all the equity and all the capital and all the promises of the world, and it still would not have been enough to even scratch the surface to pay the cost to clean ourselves. And this is what takes Jesus from being just a regular old shepherd to a good shepherd. Look what Jesus says again. He says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. In order for us to be clean, Jesus had to do what only he could do, meaning no one else could have done what Jesus did. He was the only one who was perfect, without sin, and able to take on all of our filthiness in order for us to be seen in the eyes of God as clean. That's why in this moment with the religious teachers, Jesus draws on this comparison between him and them. You see, the religious teachers also considered themselves shepherd type. They believed that they were the voice of God leading the way of all people to follow them. They believed that if people listened to them, they would draw closer to God. But Jesus knew best, and he wanted to make sure that the people saw the difference between the two. So here's what he says. He says, a hired hand will run when he sees a wolf coming. He will abandon the sheep because they don't belong to him, and he isn't their shepherd. And so the wolf attacks them and scatters the flock. The hired hand runs away because he is working only for the money and doesn't really care about the sheep. Now, these are some strong words. There's strong words that Jesus is spitting here, okay? He's basically calling the religious teachers a bunch of punks who shy away when the going gets tough. Jesus is trying to show those listening the difference between his own sacrificial love and the care for the sheep, contrasted against the lack of care and love of the religious teachers who God had sent and they had basically failed. You see, the real Jesus paid the ultimate price for you and I. He gave us, without our own prompting, his very own life so that we could now have the ability to be clean, which makes it all the more painful, confusing, and dangerous when we follow a false, half-true, or untrue version of Jesus. It leaves us vulnerable to and at the mercy of predators and the ultimate predator. Because whatever fake version of Jesus we've somehow inherited or invented, it will not stand up and protect us in times of need because it has no true goodness or realness about itself. It's kind of like, have you guys, if anybody on Twitter, the social media app Twitter, because they started issuing this new thing so that you can actually pay to be verified. Like the moment I joined Twitter way back in 2009, I tried to get verified, like I'm some famous person. I'm not, right? But now you can actually pay a small subscription fee every month, and you get to have this blue check mark next to your name, which in the Twitter world makes you a big deal, okay? And so what ended up happening, people saw this, and in their spare time, because they had no other time, they started creating imposter accounts of some famous people or major corporations and posting as if they were the real thing, okay? Now, some of what happened with that imposter accounts were really bad. There was it caused some really major trouble, okay? But in this world, you just have to laugh at the things that are laughable, okay? For example, somebody created a fake McDonald's account and said, proud to announce that all McDonald's locations will now be serving Beyond Meat. Our meat is far beyond its expiration date. Now listen, McDonald's fries are the greatest. Everything else, suspect, okay? Just saying. Here's the second one. George Washington came back from the dead. Hello, peasants. I'm rolling around in my grave, and I decided to resurrect great things to come. And my own personal favorite, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola said, if this gets 1,000 retweets, we will put cocaine back in Coca-Cola. Now, I'll be honest with you, because this is real life and we bring all our real problems and everything. I saw that tweet and I may have celebrated a little bit, okay? I don't do drugs, but man, Coca-Cola is the best thing on earth, right? I can't imagine what it would be like if they had that other substance in it. Now, those imposter accounts are a lot like the invented or inherited version of Jesus you may have been holding on to. A hired hand who runs when trouble approaches. You see, according to the Jewish law in the first century, a hired hand was required to be in place for the protection of the sheep. In case, now hear me out, in case one wolf shows up, one. But if more than one showed up, then that hired hand could leave to protect himself and still get paid. Like, wait, what? That's a bad shepherd. That's a false shepherd. And many of us have invented or inherited that version of Jesus. He seems cool, or he seems accepting, or he seems all love, or he's full of harsh truth. But does he stand up and stick with you when times get hard? When things aren't going the way you had hoped, when the college degree doesn't pan out, when the job is no longer there, when your spouse becomes your ex, when the doctor says it's terminal, when you're at the graveside, when your bank account is in the red, when you're at your lowest, where is that Jesus? Where is he? Probably nowhere to be found, because that Jesus is a hired hand. He was only good enough until it wasn't good enough. But the real Jesus, the true Jesus, is not only good enough, he is perfect enough. Perfect in every way, which is why he and only he can be the good shepherd. who is the voice in the darkness, calling us to a better way of living, a better way of doing this life. He is the good shepherd who stays no matter the danger you're facing. That's the beauty of this saying. When he says the good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. Jesus understood that we, like the sheep, were in desperate need of someone better than us, someone not swayed by this world, someone who wouldn't run at the face of trouble, someone perfect enough to come and not only lead us, but to be our voice, our guide in the darkness, someone willing to lay down and sacrifice his life so that the sheep no longer lived at the mercy of the imposter, of the predator, the one who comes to kill, steal, and destroy. I'm reminded of the story of the two criminals who got crucified alongside of Jesus on that Friday afternoon some 2,000 plus years ago. Both criminals deserved death. They deserved the death penalty that they were getting for their crimes. They should have been up there on those wooden crosses, not Jesus. And I don't know how much you know about the Roman crucifixion process. It is literally one of the most gruesome ways to die. It is death by suffocation. You're hanging there, and basically your knees get so tired that they give out, and the posture that they have you hanging in makes it hard for your lungs to reinflate, and so you just basically end up suffocating, which makes it all the more beautiful and powerful in this moment shared between Jesus and one of the criminals that hung next to him. One criminal is mocking Jesus and demanding that he proves that he's the Messiah that he claims to be. This other criminal utters a 9-word prayer. One of the writers of the New Testament, a guy by the name of Luke, captures this. This is what he says. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me. One of the most powerful prayers in all of Scriptures. I mean, this man is a dirty, filthy, bad sheep who rightly deserved death that was awaiting him. And he called out in the midst of that darkness, hoping to hear the shepherd's voice. And look what he hears in response. Jesus replied, I assure you, today you will be with me in paradise. You see, that's the voice of a real and perfect Jesus. That's the voice of a real and perfect God. That's the voice of a good shepherd. Let me ask you, are you listening? And maybe if you would listen, you would hear Jesus saying, I am here. And the life that you are leading right now is not my best for you. If you will say yes to me, if you will give me your life, I promise you, I will be with you every step of the way. And maybe that's you today. Maybe you need to say yes to Jesus. It's as simple as admitting that you need him, believing that he died for you, and choosing to follow him today. Maybe that's the step you need to take. Or maybe next weekend, you've been following Jesus, but you haven't really just gone all in. And next weekend, you have an opportunity to go all in and get baptized. It's one of our greatest weekends here at Real Life. And we would love for you to be a part of that. Or maybe you've gone all in, but there's this imposter that's living. Maybe you have this version of Jesus that you're realizing now, man, it's not the one. It's time for you to replace that imposter. Let me pray. Jesus, thank you so much, God, that you are a voice in the darkness, that you are the good shepherd, that we can hear you and see you and know, God, that you are good and you will never not be good. Lord, may we all know that, feel that, understand that, and trust the real, perfect, and good shepherd. We pray this in Jesus' name, and the house said,